Good evening, and welcome to this regular meeting for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Everybody, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Here.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Here.
Mrs. Saxon,
Here.
Mrs. Tamira,
Here.
Mr. Vaca.
Here. Finalization of the agenda. Is there anything to add and or delete?
The agenda is final as presented.
Thank you. All right, moving to the superintendent's treasurer's report.
Awesome. Tonight, we have a great update for the board out of our pupil personnel department. And Mrs. Vance is going to share with you a little bit about our most recent ratings and all the great things that are happening in pupil personnel. Hi, everyone. Thank you. So I wanted to just take an opportunity to present to you. Recently, we received our rating from the state and wanted to share with you, and then also just some general information as to what is going on in our department here in North Ridgeville City Schools. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is there is a Mr. Hieronymus, it's not working, so can you
There we go.
assist me? Thank you. So this is just a brief representation of our current pupil personnel department. So it lists for you our total numbers of students that we are servicing, which is 760 students. We have had a large number of enrollments, which we have talked about previously, that is requiring special education services. And as a result, we have needed to increase our related services staff, which is our school psychologists, our speech and language, occupational therapy. We are still doing okay with servicing with one physical therapist. And we also meet also the social and emotional needs of our students in our district by our ESR that is serviced K through 12, our BCBA that we contract with, and along with our 2 social workers within the district. So that is just a brief summary of the staff that are in the district. Nope, it's not working.
Click the these.
You can go, yep, there we go. So we received this percentage breakdown, which is a really helpful visual for all of us to look at. It's a snapshot of our students serviced on an IEP. On the left, you'll see that there's a percentage of students with disabilities. And of that image that's on the left, you'll see the two bars bar graph that's there. The one on the far left is a representation of North Ridgeville City Schools, and the one on the right is of Ohio. And North Ridgeville City Schools is the orange. Those are our students that are currently being serviced with disabilities, which is 13.87%. And Ohio's average right now is 15.40%. So we are right in line. They generally say the average percentage in your school district should be around 12 to 13%. And we are right where we would anticipate to be currently in the state average, with Ohio average being slightly above. On the far right side, there is a breakdown. I don't expect anybody to be able to read that in close detail, but it's a visual support for you of disability distribution. And it basically breaks down the disabilities that we are servicing here in North Ridgeville City Schools in comparison to Ohio. And they do have a breakdown of, and they have a general idea of what they say, what disability and how many you should, generally speaking, have in your district. And for the most part, we are in line across the board. There are a few where we might be higher in one area and lower in another area, so there is a balance. But there is nothing that we are identified as being disproportionate, and that is the area that we have to stay focused on. This data on this document right here is from 18-19 and 19-20 school year. So as you know, district data that we get from the state is always in the rear. It's not the most current. Next slide. I am proud to share with all of you that North Ridgeville City Schools received a 2021 rating of 4.0, meeting requirements with no required actions. It is definitely something that we can be very proud of, and it doesn't always happen. You know, there is always, with the amount of compliance that we have to maintain within our department, with the amount of students that we are servicing, that is a hard accomplishment to receive. So it is definitely something that we should be proud of. And I want to have the opportunity to recognize this and the work that all of the staff have done over the years to make that a possibility. On the next slide, it will share with you some of the indicators that are included in that rating. And all of these 7 indicators are compliance indicators. So it is the work that we do as far as timelines. The top one is disproportionality. So that is, are we over-identifying identification of special education students? That one is directly related to race. The second one is timely and initial evaluations. This came again, as I shared with you, the 18-19, 19-20 school year, and that 60 were completed and 100% were completed in the timeline expected. Indicator 12 is the early childhood transition. Interestingly enough, it says total of 8. I can let you know as of right now, we have 43 that are due by January. So that's just an indication to you of how our district has changed. So I found that to be quite a chuckle, that we only had 8 during that year, and those evaluations need to be completed by the age of 3, and they were at 100% compliance. Secondary transition, 100 were completed at 100%, and then the last 3 were timely correction. If there is non-compliance, we are given timelines we need to follow. Timely and accurate data, that is all of our EMIS data that we enter in. That is a huge part of what Mary Gorski does, and also what we do with Brittany Cicchetti, all the work, the data that goes in there. And then the final one, which is music to any director of people personnel, is an IDE audit findings. No audit findings were identified. So we love to see that and not be notified of that. So that is how we were able to get the 4.0 across the board. And the next slide, some of the performance result indicators that were not included, that we anticipate to be included in the future, are the following areas that are listed here: the math proficiency, reading proficiency, 3rd grade reading proficiency rate, participation in the math and reading alternate assessments, and then the federal graduation rate. Those are very commonly, they've always been included, but they were not included because of COVID. They pulled those out. Also, the state of Ohio has changed the profiles for special education and how they've been gathering data. And in their reworking of that, they pulled those out of our profiles. I do want to note, previously, we have had impact of not meeting the participation in math and reading alternate assessment. I can report to you that when that is included in, previously we had not met those, but that has been addressed over the past 3 years with training, reducing across the district. So I'm excited to see what that rating will be coming forward. So that will be a positive recognition coming forward. On the next slide, I wanted to just share with you a few updates and future development for our pupil personnel department. As I've shared with you, currently to date, over last school year and this current school year, we have had 115 students enroll on IEPs. And one of the areas that I have shared with everyone is, one of the things is those are 115 students that we didn't identify. And so when we look at disproportionality, we have to be aware that the state may say to you, you have more students in your district than you should. And I think we just have to remember that we did not identify them, although we will service them, we will meet their needs. So it's a number that we have to be aware of, and how do we meet those needs? I am excited to share with you that North Ridgeville City Schools continues to run the emotional support rooms in the buildings K through 12 to support students with emotional and behavioral needs. I can share with you that this past year, North Ridgeville City Schools held their own Special Olympics Field Day. Some of you attended, and I appreciate your participation. We are excited to see this event continue, along with joining the Lorain County event in Elyria. Our staff was so excited to have the opportunity for our students to be recognized individually here, versus when we go to Elyria, it's a very large event, and it's hard for that individual recognition to occur. The department is developing the SNAP, which is the Special Needs Advisory Council for Kids, to build leadership capacity within the department and increase inclusivity amongst our students within our buildings. One of the research-based practices is that our students need to be included in the gen ed setting. And in order best practices to occur, we need to build that capacity. And we are going to use this group to do that. Finally, North Ridgeville City Schools has developed PD clinics for teachers over this past school year, summer and future, to engage in professional development around compliance and process. One of the things that has really been helpful with that is Zoom. You know, our teachers were able to participate this summer via Zoom. We were able to record it. It is something that they can go back at and look at and reference. So, you know, when you look at the pandemic, there is a positive, and I am glad that we were able to have that as a positive to what we are doing to support students. And finally, I just wanted to share with you some pictures where we are constantly seeing the able and not the label of our students. Next slide. So just some images just to share some of the positive things that are going on across the district. And that's all. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you to you and your staff.
Thank you.
It's exciting to see those type of results. It's exciting knowing that we made the commitment to meet the needs of all of our students. And the passion that you bring and the team brings is amazing. And to meet all those benchmarks and those timelines during the pandemic is a feat unto itself. So nice job. And again, thank you.
I'd like to add, Mrs. Nancy, 48 versus 8. Well, first of all, congratulations to you and your staff on that board meeting. But the 48 versus 8, what kind of bind does that put you in as far as like, do you have 48 students now that you have to assess before January versus 8
at the preschool
yes,
in the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you continue to work when you meet the needs. I mean, the staffing is there. We constantly are, you know, the preschool has added spaces, you know, we added rooms. You know, they're constantly in an evaluation process, you know, so that's basically what that means.
Okay.
And, you know, I think just because 48 students are in the early learning, what used to be affectionately called Help Me Grow is now called early learning in Lorain County. It doesn't mean that they all qualify, you know, and it also doesn't always mean that they all will receive services in our preschool.
Okay.
And so it's a process, but it does take time. But I think that the team is very organized and they have good communication and they'll meet that need.
Thank you.
But it's obviously the preschool will grow. You know, as their district grows, that's an area that will have to grow also.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then tell me a little bit more about disproportionality. How the state says you have too many students who are in one area or another. I mean, we can't determine how many students live in our district who have autism or who have any other special needs. So what is our
So
What-
ultimately,
what do we do about that?
correct, you're correct with that. So just like, you know, the state can't tell you, you know, you can't control, just like we can't control how many students are moving in, you know, how many families move into our district that
right?
are on IEPs or not on IEPs, or what their needs are versus another need, you know, we can't predict that. And so basically what the state does, and it's ultimately a reflective process. That's how I've been told to look at it, is the state will come to you and they'll ask you to reflect what you do. And so how are you servicing them? What can you do better to support those students? And if it was a scenario, maybe not where we have this influx of, you know, move-ins, you would be reflective of your practices of evaluations.
Okay.
You know, are your evaluation practices appropriate? How are students becoming evaluated or identified? So that would be one way that you would look at that. For us, if we were to be found disproportional or have disproportionality, I have a hard time saying those two. But if we were found to have disproportionality, we would include that as part of our evidence that in this district, we have a huge influx of families moving to the district. And so we can't control that. But how do we support their needs? So that would be ultimately, they call them corrective action plans, and you just write them, submit them, and work to meet, you know, the plan that you create.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, I have a question. So in regards to IEPs coming into the district with special needs, obviously we accept the IEP as presented when they come to district. Do we typically evaluate those
Yes.
ourselves as a
Yeah,
and
we,
make adjustments? Is that a year-long period or,
we evaluate within 30 days of the student moving into the district.
okay, so we can make adjustments to those IEPs and those things?
Absolutely. We don't just accept it 100% as is.
Right.
Usually it is acceptable in the manner that it's come. But if there's anything glaring, we would absolutely make an adjustment to that. But we always review them within 30 days and do an acceptance of it. The only exception to that would be a student moving from out of state. We're obligated to do a complete reeval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vance. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. All right, again, good evening. Here's an opportunity for hearing of the public. On behalf of the board, we welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's board education meeting. North Ridgeville is a community with high passion. We love our students. We are fortunate to have wonderful families, and we have been blessed by the community support. As long as I've been a board member, when our students need something, when our Rangers' education is at stake, our community responds, and we are grateful. We realize many of you are here to talk about the recent change to our masking requirement. We've received phone calls and emails from both sides, and we realize the passion involved here. Mask policy has become a national debate that's proved very divisive, but that unfortunately has no clear answer that works for everyone. It has not been solved across the nation, and quite frankly, we probably will not solve it tonight. We are here to listen to you, though. For those wishing to make a public statement, participants will be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by the announcement of their name, address, and connection to North Ridgeville City Schools. Our policy for public participation allows for each participant to be limited to 3 minutes, 30 minutes total, and all statements must be directed to the presiding officer. And at no point is a person to address the board members individually. Please be reminded that this meeting is a Board of Education meeting held in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business, and this is not considered a public community meeting. Board members generally do not provide a response to questions during public participation. Please know we are listening. Also, please be considerate of all speakers. Respect is crucial to productive communication. Finally, we know these last several years have been exhausting. We can all agree our main goal is to educate our students safely. Finding a solution that works for every family may not be possible, but is a worthy pursuit. We have to work for a solution that will keep our kids healthy and, more importantly, in school 5 days a week in person. So again, as you approach the podium, please state your name, sign in, where you live, and your connection to the schools. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, good evening. Bailey Voorhees, 38102 Terrell Drive. I have two handsome young fellows back here who attend North Ridgeville Schools, a second grader as well as a kindergartner. I guess I come for a number of reasons, but my biggest concern is instruction. I come to you as a mother, and I also come to you as an educator myself. I know there's a lot of things that are being said about masks, whether or not we should use them, whether or not we shouldn't, their effectiveness, but I'm not here to argue that. I'm here to argue for proper education for my children. Last year, I made a hard decision to remove my children from North Ridgeville schools because I didn't feel as though you could properly educate them only 2 days a week. This year, I was excited, as I shared in my email to all of you, that North Ridgeville was coming back 5 days a week, and I was excited. I'm a product of public education. I work in public education. I know how great public education can be. And for my kids to be welcomed back into the district, I was very excited. My kids were directed to wear their mask, the kids being kids, and seeing other kids not wearing them. My oldest son, he was quarantined as a result of it, and he lost a whole week worth of education. And that is something that is hard for me to grasp as a parent. As a public entity representing a school district, your job is to protect instruction for our kids and to keep them safe. And I felt that the district has failed to do that over the past year and a half. I reached out to you hoping that someone would reach back out to me, and I didn't hear anything from any of you. So again, I question whether or not you are here to represent our kids the best way possible. And looking at the state's historical data with North Ridgeville City Schools and with my children being in K-3, the district doesn't have a great movement rate from on track to off track. It's been around 50%, so only 50% of kids in K-3 who have been identified as being off track are moving to on track. And that was pre-pandemic. So what does that look like now during the pandemic and then post-pandemic? I'm concerned because I know that this district has great potential. It's one of the many reasons why we moved to this city. But I do know that districts, as well as their leaders, can make or break a city. And I want this city to thrive. We've got great neighbors. We've got great friends. And my youngest child has a great kindergarten teacher. It's one of the reasons that I remain hopeful that this district will pull through. But I think it's important to recognize that even my oldest son, he missed 35 hours of instruction. I'm cutting that when you think of transition times, you think of their exploratory classes, lunch and recess, that type of things. I did get some feedback from Mr. Pritt, so thank you for reaching back out to me. I truly appreciate that. There were 47 other students that were quarantined. So if my math is correct, that's an additional 235 hours that were lost of instruction. And so parents, I know that we all have different feelings about mask and not mask, but right now masks keep our kids in school. And so that's what I want this community to fight for, is keeping our kids in school.
Anybody else this evening? Now's your opportunity.
I'm Mandy Bush. I'm at 6098 Denise Drive, and I have a son that goes to RHTA. This is his second year. He's a third grader. I was a homeschooler before. So last year was the first year I had him in a public school. I will say I was blown away last year, in a good way, a very good way. I'll say that much. It was probably a good transition going from homeschool to public school. However, the teachers were amazing, the whole staff. I had no problem with it. I guess, 2 days in person, you wore a mask, 3 days at home. I was very excited to find out when we started school this year, there were no masks. I don't agree with the masks. I think it should be the parents' responsibility. I'm fully aware that there's a risk of my son being quarantined. However, that's on me as a parent. I do not feel it's the school's responsibility to keep my child safe when it comes to his health. It's not your responsibility to vaccinate them. It's not your responsibility to keep them from disease. They're going to be exposed to it for the few hours they're in school, or they're going to be exposed to it when they're home. So I don't think it's safe or it's fair to lay all responsibility on the school, because the parents, those of us who don't mask our children when they're not in school, means that when they come home, they're not being masked anyway. So I don't think it's fair for us to, I don't think it's fair or right for the school to lay that responsibility on you and say that you are now requiring me to mask my child in school. And that's just that's my feelings. I'm upset about it. And my husband and I are very close to pulling our son. We don't want to, and we'll be very sad about it, but I've homeschooled before and I'll go back to it. I don't want to, because he really enjoys school. He does. And he's a social boy. And we did ask him if he wanted us to submit the exemption so that he doesn't wear the mask. And he said he didn't want to, he'll wear it. So our son is willingly wearing it, and we're not going to submit the exemption because our son is old enough to make that decision. However, we're not happy about it. And my husband and I are in a conversation about pulling our son. So that's just our opinion. We feel that should be on our shoulders as parents, whether or not to choose whether our children whether they are masked. Because parents are fully aware that there's a chance of quarantine. We were made aware of it when the email came out at the beginning of the year before school even started. It was laid out, this is what could happen. So that is how I feel about the masks with our children.
Thank you.
Any to us this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Education report, Mr. Tamira.
Thank you. We have one item for consideration under the education report. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the contract with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio, who provide services to our students that are visually and hearing impaired for the 2021-2022 school year. This is the first reading of this item, and the second reading and consideration for the approval will be at our September 21st regular meeting.
Thank you. Move on to communication report, Ms. Yetsey.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the following gifts with appreciation. $45 was donated by Jennifer Hicks through the Charities Aid Foundation of America Employee Giving Campaign to the North Ridgeville City Schools. $3,115 was donated by the North Ridgeville High School Soccer Boosters to purchase 35 Under Armour rain jackets to the North Ridgeville High School soccer team. An adapted stroller was donated by Mrs. Stephanie Nagy to the early childhood learning community. $1,780 was donated by the NRHS track boosters to purchase a track record board for the North Ridgeville High School track team. One gently used violin and the oil palms for the music instrument was donated by Nicole Pierce to the Ranger High Tech Academy. One gently used keyboard music instrument was donated by Crystal Hassan, I'm sorry if I'm saying names wrong, to the Ranger High Tech Academy. One gently used Casio keyboard music instrument was donated by the Fortuna family to the Ranger High Tech Academy. And finally, 2 mobile TV monitor carts were donated by Thomas O'Brien to the technology department to be used as needed. That's a lot of donations. Thank you very much to our community for their tremendous support of our schools and our students.
Thank you. Buildings and operations report. There are several items to consider under buildings and operations this evening. The first is the reassignment of equipment, which will be used for spare parts, may be resold or removed for disposal. Next is an adjustment to our adult meal prices. This adjustment brings us in compliance with the USDA's policy on pricing of meals served to adults. Finally is a resolution to approve the bid listed below from Nick Abraham Ford for the purchase of food service or a food service and maintenance man. This is the first reading for these items. The second reading and consideration for approval will be at the September 21st regular meeting. This concludes the building and operations report. Move on to human resources, Ms. Saxon.
We have several items in the human resources report: 86 special project supplemental contracts, 1 hourly tutor contract, 25 NREA supplemental contracts, 14 non-NREA supplemental contracts, 2 unpaid volunteer recognitions, 13 certified staff adjustments. This is the first reading for these items. The second reading and consideration for approval will be at the September 21st regular meeting. This concludes the human resources report.
Move on to the education report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have one item for consideration under the education report. We have a contract for services provided through the Jefferson County Educational Service Center for courses in the Virtual Learning Academy for the 2021-2022 school year. I move to approve the education report in one reading.
Second,
Moved by Mr. Tamira, second by Ms. Saxon. Is there any discussion this evening?
I have a question for Mr. Pritt. Mr. Pritt, have the numbers changed on that as far as participation?
They have not.
Thank you.
Any other questions this evening? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon,
yes.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca,
Yes. Okay, we'll get back to the human resources report, Ms. Saxon.
Thank you. We have a few items in the human resources report: 7 support staff appointments, 8 special project supplemental contracts, 2 support staff substitute contracts, 1 certified staff adjustment, 19 support staff adjustments, 1 certified staff resignation, 4 support staff resignations, 2 supplemental contract resignations. I move to approve the human resources items in 1 reading. Second.
Moved by Ms. Saxon, second by Ms. Tamira. Any questions? Does this look like that's, we're good as far as hiring, or we have anything outstanding? Seems like we have a lot, so would be.
We may have a couple more, but we're well off right now.
Nice job, thank you. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. All right, it's recommended the Board of Education enter into executive session for reviewing negotiations with public employees concerning their compensation and other terms and conditions of employment. There will be no action to follow.
No,
Second.
Mr. Vaca, we didn't have announcements this evening, so I had a question I wanted to ask. That's
Go
okay.
ahead, Mr. McCarthy.
I'd like to suggest that at our second board meeting of the month, if we are recognizing students of the month and staff of the month in person, that we move to a larger location to allow for kind of social distancing within our audience. I just wanted to bring that up, so if we discuss and decide that's appropriate, that we can make appropriate recommendations.
I agree. Definitely think it warrants additional conversation. I apologize for the announcements.
That's okay.
Picked up on that. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Tamira,
Yes.
Mrs. Yetsey,
Yes.
Mrs. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Saxon,
Yes.
Mr. Vaca.
Yes. All right, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.